Your title is, sorry. No, you're all right.
Because I don't intend to speak to it. Not least because I gave that title when I didn't realize that I would be giving a presentation yesterday, substituting for Dan Brock. So what I just would like to do is to point to some ambiguities that have arisen, for me anyway, during this meeting. And I'm not going to try to resolve them against my normal practice of always coming to firm conclusions. And I hate to suggest that I might be following David and asking more questions than I'm prepared to provide answers. But I think one question that I do know the answer to, and that we need always to ask, in order to resolve the ambiguities that I'm about to point to, is what is the point of a green agenda? And there are two possible answers to that question. One is sustainability, which we've had defined for us just now, and the second is a better environment. And that's an irredeemably moral idea. But that raises the question, is greener necessarily better? And it's not clear to me either what greener actually means in most contexts, or whether, even if we know what it means, that actually is a necessarily better sort of an environment. And partly this comes out from the ambiguity. So if we ask what is to be greened, there are lots of possible answers, some of which I talked about yesterday, namely human individuals, human nature, and more generally human society. And then, of course, we need to unpack that into the industrial and commercial and social practices of that society, which includes cars, trains, planes, phones, computers, and so on. And is the name of the game to green those items or to get rid of them because they're not green? And you might give either of those two answers. And lurking also behind all of this is this horrible commitment, I think insane, irrational commitment to what's natural. And the idea that what's natural is necessarily better than things that are contrasted with the natural, which might be the artificial or synthetic, or they might be the perverted, or they might be something else. So if we think about the natural in terms of the environment, everybody is in favor of a natural environment. But what is that? Firstly, is it a built environment, or is it an organic environment? And even if we're thinking about the natural environment, we have problems. What is a natural landscape? Is it, as we have a lot of in the United Kingdom, fields and hedges, pasture and forest, or is it wilderness? And within those sorts of distinctions, is a hedge superior to a fence, or is a fence superior to a wall as part of that environment, and what might make it so? And then there is the question of what are the inhabitants of these environments, whether built or natural. And I alluded to that this morning. We have lots of living creatures, plants, animals, insects, and so on. Many of them are domestic or domesticated. Are they green? Are they less green than wild-type plants or wild animals? It's not clear to me that they are. Where does genetic modification come in? Most of our plants and most of our animals are genetically modified. They've been genetically modified by selective breeding over, in most cases, many centuries, many thousands of years in some cases. And they are no less genetically modified than are the products of GM laboratories. Is breeding a better or worse, a greener or a less green technology than genetic engineering? It's not clear to me what the answer to that question is, or even how one would arrive at an answer to such a question. And the third thing I want to mention is, again, what's something that I think is an irrational commitment, although everybody seems to be committed to it, and that is biodiversity. What is biodiversity, and why, if it is it good? Why is it better? Is it better when the diversity is increased by genetically modified foods, which it certainly has been? They've increased the amount of diversity, not reduced it. Or is it better only when it's increased or at least not diminished in some other way? is synthetic biology and synthetic life forms which are arriving a welcome increase to biodiversity? Or if they're not, why aren't they? And again, as I mentioned earlier in a question, what about the decrease in biodiversity with the eradication of diseases, bacteria, viruses, and so forth? A question that does interest me is the loss of species bad per se? Is the world worse if there are fewer species, and if so, why? Is it better if there are more species of things, of plants, of animals? And if so, why? It's clearly not better for having more species of deadly viruses or more species of deadly diseases, at least as far as humans, and probably as far as farm animals for food and plants are concerned. So we have, I think, to be careful when we praise biodiversity. We don't really mean it. What we mean is good biodiversity, and that's usually unspecified and unexplained. So I guess my plea, and I'll stop about here, is for much more precision and care in stipulating or specifying what we mean when we advocate elements of the green agenda, whatever that may be. Now, everybody's in favor of it, and I'm certainly in favor of it. I've been wearing a green shirt the whole conference to show my strong commitment, and I haven't been wearing the green skin that I talked about simply because I haven't found a way of producing it. But we're all in favor of greening, and rightly so, but we have to be very careful about what we mean. And I think it boils down to the question of what sort of environment, whether built or organic, do we want to live in? And how can we achieve that, rather than trying to divide it up between organic and non-organic, or natural or unnatural? It seems to me that those are unhelpful categories. What we have to do is think about the sort of world we want to live in and the ways in which that can rationally and cost-effectively be produced. Thank you.